Imagine you just landed in Tokyo. You grab your bags, hop on the train, and eventually make your way to your Airbnb. You open the door, step inside, and that's it. That's the whole apartment. The kitchen is basically in the hallway. The bathroom is one single pod where the sink, toilet, and shower all share the same tiny cube. And your bed? It folds out of the wall. You laugh. You take a photo, you send it to your friends back home with the caption, "I'm literally living in a cupboard." But here's the thing that should actually stop you in your tracks. Millions of people live like this. And not because they're poor, not because they have no choice, but because in Japan, this is just normal. So the question isn't really, why are Japanese houses so small? The real question is, what does Japan know about living that the rest of us haven't figured out yet? Why are homes in Japan so much smaller? Japan is one of the largest economies on the planet. It's a country famous for its precision engineering, its obsessive quality standards, its bullet trains that arrive within 4 seconds of schedule. These are not people who settled for second best. And yet, the average Japanese home is roughly 65 square meters. In the United States, the average is closer to 230. In Australia, it's even bigger. By global standards, Japanese homes are extraordinarily small. But when you actually visit Japan, when you walk into those homes, something strange happens. They don't feel cramped, they feel intentional. Every shelf has a purpose, every corner is doing a job. There's a kind of quiet intelligence to the whole thing that's hard to explain until you understand the history behind it. Because the size of Japanese homes isn't an accident. It's not a failure of ambition, it's the result of centuries of geography, culture, economics, and design thinking all colliding together and producing something that the rest of the world is only just beginning to take seriously. Let's break it down. Why Japan learned to live with less space? Start with the land. Japan is an archipelago, a chain of islands. Beautiful, dramatic, mountainous islands. But here's the catch. About 73% of Japan's total land is mountainous and largely uninhabitable. You can't build suburbs on a steep volcanic slope. You can't run affordable infrastructure up a mountain range. So all of Japan's 125 million people are essentially squeezed into the remaining flat coastal land. And that flat land, it's precious. It's been precious for a very long time. Think of it this way. Imagine your entire school had to share one basketball court for every single break time. Eventually, everyone learns to share space differently. You move in tighter patterns. You become more efficient without even realizing it. That's Japan. Except the basketball court is an entire country, and this has been going on for centuries. Now add the cities. Tokyo alone is home to roughly 14 million people in the city proper, and around 37 million if you count the wider metropolitan area. It is the largest urban agglomeration on Earth. And when you have that many people competing for the same finite slice of flat, buildable land, prices go up, way up. Land in central Tokyo is some of the most expensive in the world. Buying a large plot isn't just difficult. For most people, it's mathematically impossible. So builders and architects learned to work with what was available. Narrow plots, odd-shaped lots, land tucked between train lines and riverbanks. Over time, a whole design culture emerged around the idea of doing more with less. And that culture didn't produce sad, compromised little boxes. It produced some of the most ingenious residential architecture on the planet. Then comes the earthquakes. Japan sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It experiences around 1,500 earthquakes every single year. Most are too small to notice, but the country has been shaped, literally and psychologically, by the knowledge that the ground beneath your feet is not entirely trustworthy. This has had a huge effect on how buildings are designed. Japanese homes are built to flex and absorb seismic energy rather than resist it rigidly. That means lighter materials, timber frames, designs that prioritize structural intelligence over sheer mass. And here's something most people don't know. In Japan, houses are also expected to be demolished and rebuilt roughly every 30 years. That sounds wasteful to Western ears, but it means that Japanese homes are rarely treated as permanent monuments. They're more like a practical tool, built for the current generation's needs, then cleared away when those needs change. Compare that to Europe or America, where a Victorian house from 1880 might still be standing today and is often celebrated precisely because it's old. The cultural relationship with buildings is completely different. Here's where it gets really interesting. In the West, we tend to measure a home's value by its size. Bigger equals better. A large house is a signal. It tells people you've made it, that you're successful, that you have space to spare. We equate square footage with status. But Japan developed the completely different set of values around the home. Influenced by Zen Buddhism and the traditional aesthetic philosophy called wabi-sabi, which finds beauty in simplicity and imperfection, Japanese culture never made the same equation between size and worth. In a traditional Japanese room, there's very little furniture. The floor is the furniture. You sit on it, eat on it, sleep on it. Walls slide open and closed to change the function of a room in minutes. A space that's a bedroom in the evening becomes a living room in the morning. The home isn't a collection of fixed rooms. It's a flexible, responsive environment. Architects in the West are only starting to explore these ideas seriously now. Driven by rising costs, housing shortages, and a growing awareness that bigger doesn't automatically mean happier. Research in environmental psychology consistently shows that after a certain threshold, more space doesn't make people significantly more satisfied with their lives. What matters far more is how well a space is designed, whether it feels intentional, connected to light and nature, and suited to the way you actually live. Japanese architects understood this intuitively. They had to. Necessity forced them to think more carefully about what a home actually needs to do, rather than simply how large it can be. Take the architect Kazuyo Sejima, or Sou Fujimoto, who famously designed a house with no conventional rooms, just a series of platforms at different heights, like a 3D treehouse. Or the legendary Tadao Ando, who uses raw concrete and shafts of natural light to make even the smallest spaces feel profound. These designers didn't fight against the constraint of small spaces. They made the constraint the concept. And then there's the famous phenomenon of the mansion, which in Japan doesn't mean a sprawling estate. A Japanese mansion is a standard apartment. Just the word itself tells you something about how the culture has reframed expectations around space. So what should you actually take from all of this? If you're a student thinking about design, architecture, or urbanism, the Japanese model is one of the most important case studies in the world right now. Because the pressures that created small Japanese homes, high land prices, dense urban populations, environmental risk, are not uniquely Japanese anymore. Cities across the globe are dealing with housing crises. London, Sydney, New York, Mumbai, the story is the same everywhere. Too many people, too little affordable space, too much of our identity tied up in the idea that a bigger home equals a better life. Japan offers a different blueprint, not a blueprint defined by limitation, but by intention. What if instead of asking, how much space can I get, we asked, how well can I use the space I have? What if your home didn't have a formal dining room that gets used 6 times a year, but instead had one beautifully designed multi-use space that works every single day? What if storage was built into the architecture itself so that clutter, which is one of the biggest contributors to feeling cramped, had no room to exist in the first place? These are the questions Japanese architects have been answering for generations. And slowly, the rest of the world is catching up. The tiny home movement, micro apartments, flexible urban housing, All of these trends are, at their core, Japan's philosophy, filtered through a Western context. We're just taking a long time to realize where the idea originally came from. Here's the last thought I want to leave you with. When you visited that tiny Tokyo apartment at the start, and you laughed, and you took a photo, and you said, I could never live like this, your instinct was probably right. For you, right now. With the values and habits you've grown up with, you probably couldn't. But that's not a comment on the apartment. That's a comment on what we've been taught to want. The Japanese didn't learn to live small because they gave up on something. They developed a relationship with space that is more considered, more deliberate, and in many ways more sophisticated than the go-bigger approach that dominates most of the world. And in a future where land is becoming scarcer, cities are becoming more crowded, and climate change is asking us to build lighter and smarter, that relationship with space isn't a quirk of Japanese culture. It's the template for what comes next. Maybe the real question was never, why are Japanese houses so small? The real question is, why did we ever think we needed them so big? Maybe we were never running out of space. We were just using it wrong. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing for more videos like this. See you in the next one.